Alrighty. We're gonna get started here. So first off, sorry, I was reading a chat question. Is there a way? So first off, I'll get to the question in the chat. But thanks all for joining on today. I know it's late in the day, but I found that it's always hard for online classes because the time, a lot of you work different shifts. So no matter what time I make the hour Zoom, a lot of folks can't join, but that's okay. They're recorded. So this first one I make mandatory just because I want to make sure all the requirements for this course are straightforward. If you've taken a course with me before, I recognize a lot of you. This one's a little bit different, so I just want to make sure everything's clear. From here on out, these won't be mandatory. Highly encouraged, though. But yes, the one thing specific about 220 is that there are due dates. So that's just something to be mindful of, because that is different than some of the other online courses in the ELT program. But yeah, so we'll just kind of go through a little bit about how this course runs, talk a little bit about week one. I'll save some time for questions or concerns, and then we can go from there. So really quick, just in case you haven't had me before, hi, welcome back to those that I have had before. My name is Summer Grooms. I'll be your instructor for this course. I will always be on every Tuesday from 5 to 6. Regardless if no one's on or not, I'll be here. Definitely, I highly encourage you to use that time if you can. If you have any questions or concerns or want to talk about the content, I'm here to help you in any way that I can. If you can't attend those and you still want to meet, if you have questions or concerns, I am more than happy to meet with you either, individually via Zoom or in my office hours. So I'm in JW 229, and I'm happy to accommodate my schedule for your schedule. So whatever time works for you, I'll make work for me. But all in all, I am here to help you however I can throughout this course. And don't hesitate. If you have any concerns about the way this course is taught or about anything at all, please feel free to reach out to me and I'll do whatever I can to address them. But yeah, the way this course kind of works, you'll see that there are a module each week, and that is pretty typical to most online courses. We'll do the amateur module, so that's also very similar to a lot of the other courses. It is pretty amateur heavy. And what I mean by that is you can see that there are a lot of amateur modules. So we'll talk about that a little bit, but I'm just going to pull up the syllabus first and kind of answer any questions. And I'll save some time at the end too, of course, for any questions, concerns, or anything that I might have missed. So first thing you might have noticed is that this is the wrong number. So this is not ELT 106, this is 220. I will change that, but it is the right content. So this is a 3-credit course. We're going to meet Tuesdays 5 to 6. This course is all about motion controls. So we're going to talk about PLCs, robotics, servos, sensing devices, actuators, and controls. You'll notice this first week is a lot about manufacturing and maintenance topics. So I'd say it's pretty similar to like logistics. So if you've ever taken like a logistics course, that's pretty similar to this first week. And I'll talk a little bit about it in a minute, but this is definitely a manufacturing heavy course. So whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing to you, hopefully that's a good thing. There's not a lot of math, unlike like 120, 126, where we had a math component. There's not that here. So yay for those that hate math. So all of you should have either completed 106 or 126. Be mindful of that. Sometimes people sneak by. So if you have not taken either of those, I think you can take one or the other and gotten at least a 2 point. Definitely reach out to your navigator because you should not be in this course. No textbook required. So the learning modules, those are the amateur modules that most of you are familiar with. If you're not, we'll talk about them in a minute. There's 20 in total, so there are a lot of them. and they are worth 10 points each, which equates to 200 points. There's also a midterm and final that are each 50 points, so that's 300 points possible. So you'll see that in the grade book, it records your grade as points. You can take that out of 300. And if you, whatever, like if let's say if you have 250 out of 300, you could divide those, the 250 divided by 300 off the top. But 250 divided by 300 is 0.83, so that'd be an 83%, so it'd be a 2.5. So that's kind of how you'd equate your grade. So this is really important, and that is attendance. So this is what might be a little bit different than you've seen previously. So for this course, one thing I've ran into with other classes is for online courses, sometimes it's difficult to navigate who's still actively enrolled because there's no deadlines. So there are deadlines in this course. And there's something called a module completion survey. You'll have to do that at the end of each week, basically acknowledging that you completed the module. And if you don't do that, I'm just going to assume that you're not taking the course anymore and you won't get attendance, and then it'll probably automatically drop you. So I don't want to, drop someone unintentionally, but I do that because sometimes I don't want someone to pay for this course if they're not actually taking it. So make sure you complete that by Saturday of every week. I'll show you where that is in a minute. And make sure you're completing the work every single week. If something happens where I recognize that some of you work and have really busy schedules. So you'll see that in this survey, if you can put a little note, like if you didn't finish the modules that week because of an extenuating circumstance, just put it in this note and put when you're going to finish it, and you'll be good. I'm not going to penalize you for points as long as you do it in the next couple of days or a reasonable amount of time. That's fine. So there's no hard deadlines where if you don't do the work by Saturday, it becomes a 0. I'm not going to do that. But the main thing is you have to make sure you're doing the work every week, because I don't want to unintentionally drop you if you're still planning on finishing it. So down below here, these are the topics for every single week. So you'll see that this is a 7-week course. It moves pretty quickly. This first week, it's just modules A, B, and C. So the amateur modules on manufacturing metrics, advanced manufacturing organization, and manufacturing materials. Those are the 3 learning modules to complete this week. Next week, so there's 4. And then a couple of things to keep in mind. You'll see that week 5 is the midterm exam, and then there's also 2 modules. And then week 7, there's a final exam that covers all of the modules. And I'll show you where those are in a minute. But that's how the syllabus works. That's how the course runs. The way that these hour-longs are going to work are typically, I'll save some time at the beginning if there's questions or concerns, and then I'll talk through the content, answer any questions, and then save some time at the end for questions too. So maybe I'll take a break and see if there's any questions. I will say the one question in the chat about amateur modules being able to see your score. So no, and it's funny you say that, because I reached out to Amatrol today, and there's no way for me to show you or for them to give students the correct answers after they take the quiz. I don't love that. And so what I'm going to do is say that you can have 2 attempts on the amateur modules. Typically, you can only have 1. I have to manually reset it. So in order to get a second attempt, you'll have to send me an email on what amateur module it is, and I'll reset it for you, and you can have 2 attempts. So the one thing Amatrol does show you is and I'll show you this in a minute, but after you do your first attempt, whatever questions you got wrong, it's going to tell you how many you got right and how many you got wrong. And then it's going to tell you what objectives to go back and look at. So you kind of have an idea of what you got wrong. So you kind of will know, because you'll see where objectives, you'll know what concept you got wrong, and then you can go back for a second attempt. Oh, and you can't see my screen. Okay, thank you. Let's see. I'll stop sharing and re-sharing. Sorry about that. But I was just going through the syllabus, which I'll show you where that is. So you can click on, hopefully it's moving now with me. You can click on here to open that syllabus. So kind of how this course is going to look, you'll see that it's broken down into the weeks. So we're on week 1. You can see that this is the module completion survey. So this is what's due June 8th, which is Saturday. So by June 8th, you should have these 3 modules done. The week 1 section summary, this just gives a little bit about the course, and then mentions our Zoom meeting. Also, make sure you do this introduction here. Just write a quick, I see some of you already did it, which is great. Just write a quick note about the course and that you acknowledge the syllabus, just because we have the census date on the 11th, and I want to make sure I keep everyone enrolled who's still enrolled. And yeah, so that's basically how the course runs. You'll see that a couple weeks have some extra credit opportunities. They have hard deadlines. So for like week 2, you just have to explain the difference between kinetic and static friction given real world objects. And you can do that via like a video. If you don't want to write, you can make a video of it, or you can write your answers and take a picture of it, or write them on Word. However you want to do those extra credits, it's fine with me. And then as for the final exams and the midterm, which is in week 5 and week 7, you'll see that midterms here. Oh gosh, I hope you can't see the, okay. I saw this midterm solution and I was like, oh, I hope I didn't give you guys that, because that would make it really easy, but you can't see it. So that's only on my side. So the midterm quiz is here. You'll see that it's 50 points, but if we preview it, you'll see that it is all multiple choice. So all of these questions come from the amateur modules. And I see there is no multiple attempts. I'm going to make 2 attempts on this because I hate when things only have 1 attempt. So I will adjust this so you have 2 attempts on the midterm. Hopefully you all don't have any concerns with me doing that, but I think it's nice to have 2 attempts so you can go back and learn, because that's the whole idea. So I'm going to adjust this for you. Today is June 3rd. Oh my goodness. And it'll be available until July 21st is the last day of the class. So all material must be completed by then, but you should have it done anyways at each week. So we're going to allow multiple attempts. We'll keep your highest and we'll add 2. And we'll let you see your quiz response after each attempt. Okay, so that should be more fair. So that's how the midterm's going to work. So it's just 50 points and you'll have 2 attempts. As for the final exam, you'll see that that is here. And it works pretty similar. It's 50 points still, but you'll see that this is actually a written one. You can ignore the W 2021. It's still the same. So for this one, you'll want to answer each question, and each question has a set amount of points. So I would recommend that you submit this early, just because I don't want to be unable to open the document and not be able to give you the points. So I would submit at least a couple days before the end of the semester. And it says in here, it has to be a PDF. So if you don't know how to make something a PDF, let me know and we can meet and I can help you. So that's how the final exam will work. That's how the midterm will work. Everything else is just those amateur modules. And I have been talking now for 20 minutes, which is a while. So I'm going to pause and just see if there's any questions, concerns, or everything seems pretty straightforward so far.
I don't know if I missed it, but are you able to move forward a week if you get ahead, or?
Oh, good question. You are absolutely able to move forward. So the completing each module a week is you have to at least do that do that, but you can get as ahead as you want. You will not be penalized at all for going too far ahead. So go
Okay.
as fast as you want. Good question. Any other questions or concerns? I will say too, if you get like really ahead and finish early, sometimes I have that. Just shoot me an email that you're done with the course. I can check everything, make sure you're good to go. And then you don't have to worry about the course, and I won't like mark you absent because you shouldn't have to log on if you finish.
Okay,
So that
perfect.
happens sometimes where students will finish like a week or two early. So just shoot me an email and we'll make sure that you're good to go.
Okay.
Any other questions or concerns? Okay, not hearing anything. Like I mentioned, please reach out though if there's anything, or if you don't like the way this is ran. Just any questions, concerns. It's great to hear. So, like I said, for the amateur modules, I wish it would give you the responses back, but it doesn't. But you will see, because I got a couple wrong on this one purposely to see what it would do. And on your end, when you complete a quiz, so you can see that there's 7 questions on the first quiz. Most of them have about 5 to 10 questions. I had gotten 4 right, 3 wrong. So it gives you your grade, and then it doesn't tell you exactly which ones you got wrong. But what it does tell you is what objective. So for example, for this manufacturing metrics, it told me that I got objective 2, objective 4, and objective 6 wrong. So what that means is there's of the 7 questions, the 3 that I got wrong were regarding these subjects, which makes sense that they give me 3 to review, right? Because that means I got 1 wrong in each objective. So that's helpful. So basically, the way that the amateur modules are going to work, take your attempt. And I will say too, like if you start to take an attempt and like you realize you need to go back and relook at the material, just exit out the quiz and it won't, I don't think it'll save. And then you can just go back and retry. So there's a tip for you, like if, because that happens sometimes, just exit out the screen, like click on this X here and it'll like reset it for you. But like I said, so once you do your first attempt, if you get a couple questions wrong like this, review them. And once you feel confident in knowing that, send me an email and I'll just reset that quiz for you, so you can retake it. So you can have 2 attempts that way. And you'll see that another tip too is if you want, you could, it might take a while and it might be tedious, but you could write down the question, and that way you'll know, like once you see what objectives you got wrong, you can kind of figure out what question you got wrong and go back and review that material. So as for like the learning material, you'll see like this first one, manufacturing metrics, it has 7 objectives. Like I mentioned, it's all related to advanced manufacturing. Specifically this first week it talks a lot about logistics, which I'll talk about in a minute. But yeah, so I'm just gonna pause again, make sure there's no questions on Amatrol or that. I'm not hearing anything, so assuming that all makes sense. The other thing I'm just going to click on here is to show you this completion survey. Again, make sure you do this by the end of the week. You can see that like this first week one is due June 8th. You'll see that for week 2, it says June 15th. Make sure you do that. It shouldn't take long. All you have to do is click on it, and it just wants you to acknowledge that you completed the modules. Hopefully you can check yes to this. If you haven't completed the modules, just explain kind of how you're going to make up for it. And you just can't miss 2 in a row. So if you miss 2 modules, like 2 weeks in a row where you don't do anything, I'll just assume you're not taking the course again, and it'll probably drop you. But yeah, and you can also put if there's any like questions or concerns, you can throw them in there too. Okay, so that's basically how the course runs. I'll probably talk a little bit about week 1 and just the content that you're dealing with, and then we'll save some time for any other questions. And if not, we'll let you guys go for the day. Okay, so this first, you can see that for A, B, and C, they all relate again to manufacturing. This first one talks about manufacturing metrics. B talks about advanced manufacturing organization. So what they mean by that is typically it talks about like the organizational structure, like management and all of the different types of staff you'll have. And then Module C talks about manufacturing materials. This one's pretty straightforward. As you probably are aware, if any of you work in manufacturing, a lot of manufacturing companies start with getting in raw material, like raw, large ingots of metal, right? And they melt it down and then mold it into different parts and everything. So this talks about the different types of materials you might be dealing with. So just to kind of pull up C for a little bit to show you, you can see that it talks about the different types of metals you might have. So ferrous versus non-ferrous. It talks about alloys and what those are. And then it goes into plastics, composite material, and ceramics. So it talks about all different types of materials you might be dealing with in a manufacturing environment. So this one's pretty straightforward. But yeah, so and I would say too, like if any of you, a lot of you work in manufacturing plants, so like if you already have familiarity about dealing with plastics or whatever your company does, you can skip over reading some of those objectives too. You're not graded on like the actual material and skimming through it. You're only graded on the quiz. So really it's just kind of look at the objectives of what you don't know and spend time on the things that you don't know. And this week's a little bit unique because you probably haven't done any, but as the weeks go on, for next week or any of the following weeks, if there's any questions that you got wrong or any objectives, bring those questions to this meeting and I can look up and see kind of what you got wrong and we can talk through kind of about that problem and hopefully make sure that for the next attempt you get it right. So bring any questions to this meeting if you have any, if there's any that you get wrong that you don't know. Okay, so Module A, it talks about manufacturing metrics. So the first couple objectives for this one are pretty straightforward. Just a tip, I think the majority of the questions come from the later objectives for the manufacturing metrics module. So you can see that it talks about the critical manufacturing performance objectives. So I'm just going to open this just to kind of skim through it. So you'll see too that it's kind of loud, but I always just turn off the sound so you can do that. And then also a lot of times I want you to do the like how to use Amatrol. So make sure when you start, because you want to actually get to the content, use this little side arrow and this will bring you to all of the different objectives and you can just click on them and read them. So you can see that there's 42 slides for this module and you can just click on, like, let's say you already know about these first 3 objectives, you can just click on 4 and it'll start you halfway through. So you can kind of toggle around as needed. So this first half of this module talks about these 5 critical manufacturing performance objectives, and a lot of them you're probably familiar with. So you can see that these are the 5 main ones, and that is quality, flexibility, speed, reliability, and cost. So quality is one that most of you are probably familiar with, right? And that's just a lot of manufacturing plants have a whole quality department, and that's just to ensure that the parts are all up to a certain standard, right? They hold a certain standard, and quality is really important. There are a lot of different components just in that by itself, especially in a manufacturing plant, because a lot of times when you're, creating thousands of one part, if there's a quality problem with one, there's a quality problem with all, right? And that can cost a lot of money. So that's why quality is definitely really fundamental and critical when it comes to manufacturing. So you'll see that you can just kind of keep skimming on. A couple of the others that I just wanted to kind of touch on that are important. Of course, cost, right? Cost of the products that you're creating. There are a lot of things to consider when it comes to cost because you have the whole life cycle sometimes of that object. And what I mean by that is sometimes companies start with, they get an actual ingot of metal and you melt it down and then you mold a part and then maybe they paint that part and detail that part. So there are a lot of different ways and there are a lot of different steps, and all those different steps can have certain costs associated with it. So that's definitely one that you kind of have to break down and see where your costs are and where the large costs are, that if you can kind of cut them if you can. Reliability is important, of course, flexibility and speed. So speed and costs kind of go hand in hand, right? Because if we take a while to make a part, that's a lot of employees, a lot of labor, a lot of power time, or, especially with consumers' power, it can be quite expensive these days during the hours where someone works. So that can be a big cost to a company as well, too. So just some things to consider. So yeah, you'll see that kind of as you go through this module for a lot of the objectives, it talks about the different types of performance metrics and key process indicators. You've probably heard that term before. KPI is sometimes what employees and employers will call those, and those are typically per employee, right? So like an employee might have certain KPIs that they have to meet, and that's just a way to assess performance. So take a look into that. Objective 3 talks about productivity. We want to make sure that we're, being efficient, that the machines are being efficient, and that the employees are being efficient. And then definitely look at objective 7. So that talks about how to calculate value added per employee. So there are a couple of equations to kind of skim through here. So you can see this one here is how you would calculate the value added per employee. So that would be V equals P times U divided by E. There is a question I think that relates to this. That's why I want to talk about it. So essentially what this is saying is you would do the number of products sold times the price per unit and divide it by the number of employees, and that would give you the value added per employee. So essentially that's just kind of a metric to see the average value of a product shipped per an employee. And the one thing that this is used for a lot of times is wage decisions. So you can see that it says that here. So let's say, if your value added per employee is really high, that means that your employees' jobs are very valuable, so they would be paid more. So this would be like a good metric, both as an employer or like the administrative side of things to know, like the human resources, if they are like posting jobs. But it's also helpful for an employee to know what the value added per employee is, because that might help you be able to fight for higher wages, right? If the value added per employee is really high and they're, not paying you that well, that shows that your job is valuable and you should be paid more. So just some things to keep in mind. Okay. And the last module, and I'll probably, as time goes on or like next week, I'll talk about these more in more detail, but this first week's kind of difficult because you haven't taken any attempts yet, probably. So the last one, just to give you an idea on, is advanced manufacturing organization. So as I mentioned earlier, this one talks specifically about all of the different types of staff that you might have at a manufacturing plant. So you'll see too that there is a self-review, which I accidentally just clicked on. You don't have to perform or do the self-review. You can skip that. That doesn't count towards your grade. So the one thing I did, functional areas, I forget what this one talks about. Okay, so the first objective here in this module talks about the 6 functional areas of an advanced manufacturing plant. And you can see that we already talked about quality assurance, right? A quality department, or sometimes they're called quality engineers, production, maintenance, shipping and receiving, engineering, and administration. So just to kind of talk briefly about what all of those mean, a lot of them you probably are aware of, but production, those that work in that department are revolved around or are mainly focused on, the production of the parts, right? Because that's what a manufacturing plant is doing. It's producing parts. So that's definitely a huge department. Quality assurance, they're the ones that are ensuring that the parts that are coming out are of the same quality, right? There's a certain standard that those parts have. Maintenance is also a critical one. I know for this course, a lot of time students take this because their employee wants it, specifically if they work in the maintenance area, because that's definitely a high in demand field right now, because there are not a lot of hands-on people that are good with maintenance and being able to fix machines, right? Because that's all maintenance essentially does, is they're the ones that when a machine breaks, they're the ones that can go out and fix it. And that's definitely takes a skill. And that's why the maintenance folks these days make quite a lot of money, or they do pretty well, as compared to what they used to. And that's because, it's a high in demand field, high skilled, and high wages for sure. So maintenance department, those are the ones that are fixing the machines. That's pretty crucial, because without them, if a machine breaks, you can't run and you can't be profitable at all. Shipping and receiving, there are a lot of logistics when it comes to shipping and receiving, as you probably aware, where every manufacturing plant is doing some form of shipping and receiving always, even if they are not exporting, a finished product, they're still exporting a product. So they're still doing some shipping and receiving, and they're always importing something to start with. And what I mean by a finished product, this is a good example. You probably can think of some on your own as well, but I worked in a manufacturing plant up in Alma, and it was a die casting plant. So we melted metal, and then they, created a couple like small little parts, and then we sent the parts off, but they weren't finished parts yet. They still had to be connected to other parts, because it was some specific part of a car that had to be, um, put together with other parts. So we just sent out like parts that weren't fully finished, right? So sometimes a manufacturing plant is just doing a step along the way of the whole life cycle of that specific part. And then engineering, that's a pretty broad department. So they're assessing kind of from the start to the finish any problems that might arise. And then when it comes to administration, that's typically like your HR, and maybe any office assistant. So those are sometimes referred to as like the front desk people. So that's what it means by administration. Okay, sorry, just had to cough. So the other objectives, just to kind of touch on, are objective 2 talks about the key roles and responsibilities. So I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but this just talks about some specific job titles that you've probably heard of, and kind of what they do. So a lot of times you have a president of a manufacturing organization. They're kind of like the top of the totem pole there. And then you have a plant manager. So that's typically the step below the president. A lot of times the plant manager will have an assistant plant manager. So some large companies will have kind of a step right below that. Will have an assistant or multiple assistant plant managers. Of course, the president is going to oversee those plant managers, and sometimes a lot of manufacturing organizations will have multiple branches, right? Like, for example, GM has branches in various parts of Michigan and across the United States and across the world. So there's a president there, but then there's a plant manager at each of these plants. And there's production machine operators. So operators are the ones that are working on the machines. And there's assemblers, finishers, and production controls. Quality assurance, we already talked about. So a lot of times there's quality engineers. There's those working in shipping and receiving, those working in maintenance, those working in engineering. And then on the flip side of things, there's those working in customer service, and administration. So it takes a lot of individuals, and a lot of individuals with a lot of varying types of expertise to run a good advanced manufacturing system. So, but that's why I will say too, like, it's important to have all of these employees. So you'll probably, if you've ever had a good plant manager or good president in a business, they'll always say that, you couldn't do anything without your operators, right? Those typically a lot of times are those that are making not the highest wages in the company, right? It's normally the president or the plant manager, but at the end of the day, the ones on the line are the ones that are getting the work done, and without them, there would be no profit. So definitely those positions are very very valuable. And you'll see that in today's world too, that those positions salaries have always increased exponentially over time for operators, and that's because they are needed. So the other thing that this module talks about are the different production layer formats that you might have. And what I mean by this is the layout of the facility. So you'll see that there's something called a functional layout, a cellular plant layout, and a continuous flow plant. Again, this has to deal with how the actual facility is lined up. It might not have been something you've ever thought about, just because when you walk into a manufacturing plant, there's, just a process, and that's what it is to it. But there is sometimes specific reasons that you will lay out a manufacturing plant depending on what your specific needs are. So on this next slide here, it'll show an example of what the different types look like. So you can see that if I click on any of these, it's going to show you. So you'll see that a functional layout looks like this, where you have machining centers kind of on one side and then receiving and shipping on two separate areas of the floor. A cellular layout, you have everything in cells. So you'll see that it's all cells do a part of shipping and receiving. And then a continuous flow layout looks like this, where you have receiving at one end of the plant, you go through all stages of the operation, and then shipping's on the other side. So it's continuous and functional are kind of similar in that they only have one receiving and shipping end. They're still a little bit different. Cellular layout is really unique, and I think you probably don't see that one as much. There is a quiz question there's a couple quiz questions that talk about why you would use one over the other. So make sure you're paying attention to that as you go through. So you'll see here that this is really important. This shows you the three types and when you would use them essentially. So this is kind of like a key, I would say. So I would either screenshot this. I'm giving you permission to do that for when the quiz comes, or if you want, you can actually have this open, I think, as you're doing the quiz. That's fine with me. As long as you're able to find the information, that's the goal. So you'll see that, for example, just to kind of show you how you would read this, these are the different types of layout. And then these are a couple factors like production flexibility. So it's telling you what each layout offers. So if you have a lot of production flexibility or want a lot of it, a functional layout is going to have high production flexibility. It's also going to have high labor skills, but the con here is that, and I guess the positive too, is that the equipment costs are low. So there's different reasons that you would want one of the other. So definitely take a look at this, and it'll talk through it. And then there's a couple more slides that will go through in specifics, like kind of more detail about each layout. So definitely take a look at that. Like I said, there is a quiz question on it. And if you get to it and get it wrong, I don't remember what the quiz question is, so I'm not going to tell you what it is. But if you get it wrong, let me know and we can meet to kind of talk through it. Because if I remember correctly, when I was doing this one, that was the one in specifics that kind of tripped me up. So, but I don't remember what I asked or I would tell you. So definitely pay close attention when you're doing that. And then the other important thing from this module is it talks about something called takt time and what that is. So just to briefly touch on what that is, essentially what takt time is, and this is a good depiction of it, it is the time it takes from the start of the production of one material to the production of the next material. So typically the takt time is quite fast, as you can see by this, right? It's the start of the production of one to the other. So you'll see that this here is a good example. Two, that these water bottles are being produced on this line, and it takes 6 seconds. So 6 seconds is the takt time, because see, it's pausing for 6 seconds. That's how long it takes for this machine to spit out the next unit. So this is an example of takt time, and this is something like customers, and by customers, I don't mean like those that are drinking the water bottle. I mean those that are probably like the large companies that are buying these water bottles. That's maybe something that they would want to ask a manufacturing plant, like what is your takt time, right? Because that's how quickly can you produce these products that I need. And again, the lower the takt time, the better. And because of automation and the fact that machines do a lot of work now, the takt time is even slower than, or even faster than it was years ago, and will probably only get faster. But yeah, so basically that's an overview of the 3 modules this week. They're not too bad this week. Like I said, if you do all 3, or if you do one and get a couple questions wrong, take a look at the objectives that it tells you that you got wrong. If you feel confident with it, send me an email and I can just reset it for you. Or if you don't feel confident and there's maybe a section that's confusing to you, bring it to this hour session and we can definitely talk about it and kind of break it down and hopefully get you to the right answer. So with that, I wanted to save time at the end and just make sure everything was clear. There were no questions or concerns. Just a couple of more administration things, and then I'll let you ask any questions. Here's my contact information. You'll see too, there's this Calendly link here. So if you ever want to schedule a meeting, you can just click on this. It'll open up, they're 30 minutes meetings. They can be longer if possible, but it'll open up a schedule. And you can click on a day and whatever day and time works for you and schedule a meeting with me. And then besides that, just make sure you're keeping up the modules and don't forget about the completion quiz. If you happen to miss this, as long as you did all the modules, that's fine. But this is mostly really important for those that don't do anything. So there's no grades associated. But if you do them all on time, I'll probably give you a point or 2 of extra credit at the end. And like I said, there's a couple extra credit opportunities. You'll see this one in week 2 is worth 5 points, which is a big chunk. Again, and you can submit this however you want. And then I believe there's another extra credit opportunity in week 4, so be mindful of that. It is the same situation here. Find 2 examples of real world things that you can use, touch, have, seen that utilize hydraulic speed control. So you'll see that some of the modules in that week talk about that specifically. Module L, that's where you get the information for that. And then just don't forget about the final in the midterm and you'll be good to go. So you, like I said, you have unlimited attempts on that final and midterm, or not unlimited attempts, unlimited time on the final and midterm. The final exam, you can only submit once because it's a Word doc. The midterm is that multiple choice one that I just changed. So you have 2 attempts. So you'll get 2 attempts, unlimited time. So take your time on it. And yeah, so the main idea here is, I know this is an online course, but here to help wherever I can. And hopefully you're able to learn things along the way and learn the competencies that you're supposed to. I know sometimes those amateur modules can be dry. Sometimes the simulations don't work. So if they ever don't work, let me know and I'll try to go in and fix them, or contact Amatrol to see if they can fix them, because that happens sometimes. But with that, it is 5:47. So I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And thank you all for joining. I'm going to take a quick screen grab of who's all here so I can mark you all present. Make sure you get that first 3 done. Again, it's a quiz that counts towards your grades. So they're only like 5 or 6 questions each, but each module is worth 10 points. So it's just going to give you, the way that it'll calculate that is, let's say you get 6 out of 7. There's only 7 questions. 6 out of 7 is an 85%. So you'd get 8.5 points out of 10 for that module, if that makes sense. So each module is worth the same amount of points, regardless of how many questions it is. So if it's only got 5 questions, that's one that you'll really want to focus on, because getting 1 wrong is going to drop you to an 80%, if that makes sense. So be mindful of that as you're going through it. But yeah, so I'm going to stop talking because I've been talking for a while and I know it's the first week and you've probably had a lot of classes and you're just sick of the first week. So I'll stop talking. You're free to go if you have no questions or concerns. If you have questions or concerns, I will stay on until 6 or later to answer anything. Thanks all for joining us today.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thanks, Summer.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey, Summer.
Hi.
So I had you in my ELT, my last course, Cosmes, I don't remember
Yes.
me.
Yep, you did.
So is it basically the same thing that we did last time? Because I was kind of busy and I didn't look at the time, so I kind of hopped on a little late, like at 5:19. I hopped on.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, it's gonna have amateur modules. It's a little bit different in the sense that there are kind of specific deadlines. So you have to make sure that you get those modules done that week. If for some reason that week you don't get them done, um, I'll let you complete it the following week, but make sure you do the module completion survey each week just to let me know like when you're gonna finish it. So,
Okay.
just be
And
mindful of
then
that.
this week we just have week 1, right? I heard you say week 3. Like we gotta do 3 weeks in 1 week.
No, it's just week 1, but there's 3 modules. So if you look in the
Oh, okay.
syllabus, there's a schedule at the bottom, and you'll see that for week 1, it's module A, B, and C. So there's
Okay.
3 modules. So it's just 3 amateur modules, which isn't too much, because they're pretty short. There's like
All
5 to
right.
7 questions on each.
So these are
And
all,
this. Sorry. Go ahead,
sorry,
buddy.
go ahead.
Now you go ahead,
So
buddy.
these are all due on Saturday at midnight each week?
Yep, Saturday and midnight each week. And like I said, if you have like a busy week because of work, I get that happens. Just shoot me an email, and as long as you get it done like the following week, you're not going to get penalized. Mainly there's deadlines because sometimes I see that like students will wait till the last minute or they'll just not do anything, and I should have dropped them, and I don't drop them because I think they're going to do it at some point. And yeah, it's just like a way to kind of track who's still enrolled. So
Okay.
if that
Thank you.
answers your question, sorry, I know it was a long
And
answer
this
to your
is
question.
and this is industrial motion, right?
Yep.
And the main topic for this is like the summary of this is like because I was kind of
So,
like under yeah.
oh, sorry. I was cutting you off before you finish your answer, asking your question. But yeah, it's about advanced manufacturing is how I would think about it. So for the first week in specifics, you'll see that it's really heavy on like the structure and the logistics behind manufacturing. As weeks go on, you'll see they talk about specific topics. So week 2, it talks about power, gear drives. Week 3 talks about chain and belt drives and hydraulic power. So it's various manufacturing topics, but it kind of goes all over. It kind of bounces around all over the place to different
All right. That's all I
areas.
had. That's all I had for you. Thank you, Miss Summer.
Okay, awesome. Thanks so much. And yeah, reach out if there's any questions or concerns and go from there.
Bye bye.
Bye.